I saw. Okay, so let's create. So basically, all I did was like type in RDS, and then from there you can just click create a database. The standard create is fine. We should probably get used to like what to select. So Postgres. So this is RDS is for creating any kind of database, uh, and we want to choose which type of database we want to select. So Postgres is good. We want to do free as always, and then once we do free, you can see that we only have one option, right? Which is one instance, meaning like a computer just running on one computer, or like a database just running on one computer. Okay, like multi instances would be like it would probably create replicas in case one went down, or say you have users all around the country and you want them to have faster access to it, right? You'd have databases potentially around the country. Um, that gets complicated fast, but for now we're doing simple stuff. Okay, and we give it a name. This is just exactly what we use when we log into Postgres locally, right? We can have a username, and then we can have a password. So I'll just put in password and then confirm it. The micro, right? This again is like the hardware. So gigabyte of RAM, 2 CPUs. Storage is fine. We can enable auto scaling. We're not going to need it. I have don't connect to an EC2 resource. I know ultimately we will want to connect to an EC2, but we also want to be able to connect uh, from our laptop. And I think if we do connect to an EC2, it will only allow us to connect from like other AWS computers. What this probably does is just mess with the security groups, and ideally we should be able to navigate that anyway. And then this is the key thing. I messed this up this morning. I forgot to enable public access and then had to alter it. Um, okay, for VPC security groups, right? This is the firewall to allow access to our database. So we can, show you. We could choose any of the existing security groups that we already have, right? Like you can kind of do that whenever you're creating a resource. But what you have to be careful about is like we want to enable, if you have more than one security group, any one of them could restrict access. So you have to just check through them to make sure you're okay. What we want is we want to allow any laptop to be able to access on port 5432, right? This instance. Availability zone is fine. Like this is kind of like where the database lives, but we're fine. And then additional configuration, right? We can specify the port. The default is good. Password authentication means just using the username and password that we set above, wherever that was. And then I don't think any of this additional, I don't know. We really don't need this. I don't know if it'll charge us more. Okay, so we'll create database. This unfortunately takes a minute to do, and probably tries to upsell us. Let's look at this. So the main thing again to like look at, I believe, is the security groups. All right, we're waiting for this thing to be booted up. You can see the status is creating. The main thing that we're waiting on is our endpoint. All right, this is the URL where our database lives. And let's look at the security groups while we're waiting. So we can see we only have one security group. You really only need one security group, I believe. And if you're having issues connecting, it's probably with the security group. All right, so things to look out for. Sometimes what you'll see, so this looks pretty good. I'm basically allowing, remember this is my inbound rule, right? Like how do I allow people to access this? I'm allowing them to access on like to any port. I can change this, so this should work fine, but I could change this to just be PostgreSQL, right? In which case it will switch to be only on port 5432. This is a little bit better. It's not a huge deal one way or the other. And then notice, by the way, this is taken to be to all the security groups. This is all the security groups I have on my account, effectively. So not just the ones associated with my RDS. If I want to see that, then I should probably type RDS again and go back to that one database, right? Because we have security groups managing our EC2 instances and other stuff. What we care about is those managing associated with this guy. Let me click on this again. I just want to show you. The other thing that sometimes I'll see with the security group is, let's click on this again. And we'll do edit inbound rules. Let's say we do add a rule, and let's say we do something like, all right, allow access to 5432, but the source says something like, and it references another security group. Okay, what this is doing is this is saying I'm only going to allow access to another resource that is associated with this security group. So in other words, like, no, like my laptop can't access it because my laptop isn't part of the security group. What would be something associated with it potentially, like an EC2 machine, right? So you'll see this set up kind of properly, right? If you want to say only allow your EC2 machine to be able to access your database, right? The EC2 machine would have the security group, and your database will say only allow things with that security group to be able to access it. But right, that could restrict us from accessing it on our laptop, right? So for now, let's just remove it. But anyway, I point this out because as you go through this, right, like probably it's an issue with the security group. If you're having access issues, it's probably you want to check the inbound rules of the security group. And for now, I just enable like public access to start. Okay, let's check in on our database. And sometimes you'll have to refresh, right, just to see the most updated status. So we refresh and voila, right? We get our endpoint. This endpoint is the host, right? Like, where does this database live? The address, right? So now we should be able to use our same PSQL command, and we can do -h, right? The name of the database, or sorry, the host address. That might be good. Maybe we have to do -p 5432. You can always like wait for errors. See that? That's beautiful. But notice this user is not beautiful, right? Because we want it to be Postgres. So -U Postgres. Right, so I want to just specify the user as Postgres because that's what I specified on AWS. And then I'll put in my password, right? And now we're good. So I'm connected to my RDS database. I guess it creates some sample databases for me. I can do like create database, Foursquare development, and then create table. Oh, we should connect to it. /c Foursquare development. And now if I display the tables, we don't have any. Create table, users, ID, serial, name, text, semicolon. Okay, /dt. So now we have a table called users that has ID and text. Like, I'm just doing this as an example. What you probably want to do is, when you get to the lab, is run the migrations against this database the same way. I can kind of show you how to do that in a second, but it's the same way that we've done that locally. And then insert into users. Do I do it like this? Name. Oh man, I always forget. Sorry. Did they give me an example? There we go. Insert into table name, column, and then the values. So we should be able to do insert into name, and then just do values, and then put in, Bob, and then semicolon. All right, and let's just make sure. Select all from users. Okay, so we have a person in there. The reason why I wanted to show this is, it's like, how do we connect a Flask application to this? Well, we can just use that same a scicopg2 library, right? So if we have it's an import. I think I might scicopg2, right? This is a client. Like this is just this is just a Flask library to connect to a specified database, and that database can live anywhere. So what we'll do is it from scicopg2 import connect. Import connect. Okay. And what we need is the host. So here we have the database name, the user, the password. All right, I'll show you all. So just pass through this stuff, and then probably also what we'll want is the host, I'm guessing. Right, so the database name was Foursquare Development. The user is Postgres. My password was Postgres. And then the host equals whatever this host was. This thing. Okay, and let's see. This is my connection. All right, that seems to be good, right? And then connection.cursor. That's my cursor. And then cursor.execute, right? Select all from users. And then cursor.fetch all. All right, so this is the guy we just created. So basically, we're just specifying the login information. The same login information that we specified to connect in the first place. Right? The host, the port, I guess that was default. Then the user, and then eventually the password. We're doing that here. The host, the user, the password. And we also did the database, so we know what to connect to. So things to remember is just, like, if you're having connection issues, meaning last times, like say we type in the wrong address here or something. Okay, well that was too wrong, I guess, to even consider. But say we like type in the wrong address here. Yeah, it can just hang for a little while. So that's probably just means you did something wrong. And what I would check is check the security groups. Okay, like if you have more than one. One of them might be restricting you, in which case, you want to go to it, go to the inbound rules, click on edit inbound rules, and potentially write delete the rule. But you also need at least one rule that says that that provides you access to Postgres from anywhere. All right, we basically just need this rule.
So Jeff, really quick. So the default rule that I had was all traffic, and so
that should work. Like, did that?
Yeah.
That should.
The default rule is within the VPC. So if you undeleted that, you would see under source it would say the SGR, whatever the security group ID is, which means, well, you already deleted it, so you can't see it now, but it did say the name of the security group, meaning it's within VPC traffic.
So you're saying by default you'll see, instead of this, you'll see. Will it be here that you'll see under VPC?
So the rule that was there initially, it said all traffic, and under source, it had the name of the security group.
Oh, I see.
So it's within security group, within VP traffic.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's exactly. So if you see like a security group listed here, that's not enabling like your laptop to access it. Just another resource that is also associated or tagged with that security group.
Yeah, it's a bit confusing because all traffic sounds like all traffic.
Right, but. Right. But is the right interpretation of that allow all traffic from the specified security group, right? I'll take
Yeah.
Okay.
From within whatever the source is. So, yeah.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. Okay. Cool. So yeah, so check that. So that's one thing to look, and then the other thing is when you go to your RDS, uh, there's a little just confirm that it's checked that it's publicly available, right? So you can just to show you real quickly, if you click on the database, you can see that here, publicly available, yes. All right. If that's not set, then you probably want to go to modify, right? Which again may take a minute for it to allow you to modify it and then update this from there. I don't know. It's somewhere here.
Oh, yeah. So Jeff, yeah, I don't understand why they have like two-layer kind of access control. Like one is public accessible, another is like security group. Like is it like kind of two layers or like?
I don't have a great answer. Abhinav, do you have any answer for that?
There's a way that they interact with each other, but I don't know the details of that.
They both have to be available. Like if either of these are set to no, right, to not enable public access, you won't be able to access it. But I don't know why it's like two layers.
Yeah, that's right. I don't know the exact non-layer expertise.
Yeah. Okay. So that's the main.
Just
Yeah, go ahead.
really quick. So, anytime you create an AWS service, does it always create a new security group by default?
Well, you could see like when we created it, right? It asked us, do we want to use a
Existing
right?
one, yeah.
It said like, do we want to use an existing one or do you want to create a new one? If you use an existing one, you have to be careful that it like apply, right? Because the existing ones we had allowed for SSH access and HTTP access, but said nothing about port 5432, right? So they wouldn't give you access to the data where the database is running. Right, so that's basically what you want to do is be able to navigate to the security group. So right, I have two, but only one for inbound. So I can navigate to it and then check, right, that it makes sense. And this looks good.
So
Okay.
once you like a session on your terminal, if you close that session, you have to again make the like this is a session you already opened, right?
Right, you have
Once
to.
you open this one.
Yeah.
So if you don't shut it down the whole session like terminal, do you have to again do the security group in the AWS?
No, you just have to specify because if I shut this down, the security group stays the same. So I just have to relog in here, but you don't have to alter the security group anymore.
Okay.
The other thing is just like, say like you want to create tables here like on your database in that lives right that lives on AWS. You can. There's just the same way. I guess I don't have an example of the migrations here, but remember we used to have like a migrations file, and the way I think we would run that was doing something like PSQL-F, right? And then you do like migrations.SQL, and you would say, hey, let's do that against like the database of Foursquare development, right? As the user Postgres. Now you just add an extra flag, right, for the host, where the host is whatever, this is, the endpoint, right? So you're just, this was a command we used before. Basically, all your commands work the same. Same thing for like copying and data, like any of that stuff should still work fine. You just have to put an extra flag for the host, not that, but like the URL, right? Because by default, this host is set, but it's set to your local host, right? What's running on your laptop. Well, we want to override that by setting it to the host on one of Amazon's or any other cloud database. Okay. Okay. So right, so it's kind of nice, right? Like each of these libraries, whether it's like the CLI, right? That it allows me to just as easily interact, right? Run any command and just specify the host, but everything else stays the same. And then same thing, the Postgres, the Scicop G2 library, same thing. It works just like before. We just have to this time move away from the default, but then everything else should be fine, right? Like this should probably be set in a .m file, right? Each of these parameters, as we know. Okay, and we can, just like we can easily switch between like my local database and the production database just by specifying what the host is.